Hmm? Ah!
I'll be something, right? I mean, you won't be able to ignore me wherever the hell, even if it's under the bridge next to your house. It's like, who's the crazy guy bantering under the bridge?
Wasn't that the guy I heard on Harry's podcast like 6 months ago?
Exactly.
So last question, since we're in turn the tables mode, I'm going to turn around one more time on you. It's 60 seconds,
right,
60 seconds or less. Brandon, what is the meaning of life?
Oh, I love this. You hit me with my own question. The meaning of life is...
Podcast Junkies, episode 94. Welcome back, one and all, to the Podcaster's Voice Conversations Weekly with some really interesting podcasters lately. And I think the combination of the person I had on last week, Tom Webster, the podcaster I had on last week, not just a person, he's a podcaster. And this week's Brandon Beachum is really opposite ends of the spectrum. In case you missed it, Tom is the VP for Edison Research. He's also a co-host of the Marketing Companion. And I really was interested in getting him on the show because I know that he is chock full of information. He's got tons of experience in the broadcasting industry. He's got the stats down for what's happening with podcasting. And this is something that they do across all broadcasting mediums, not just podcasting, but they do research for elections. So this guy really knows the stats. We deep dove on a lot of topics. I wish we had more time, but we had a hard stop, and I tried to get out of him as much as I could, and I wanted him to speak as long as he could. So that's why I didn't really interrupt him too much. But please check out that episode. It's podcastjunkies.com/93. I think you'll really, really find it interesting if you're into stats, if you're into the mindset of podcasters. There's some really interesting takeaways from the research he's done. Something that I thought was really interesting was in one of the research documents that he looked at, there's a percentage of millennials who don't know what podcasts are, which I thought was interesting because everyone is saying, oh, millennials are the future and they're all up to date on all the latest technology. And then that stood out for me. And then we talked a little bit about that. But his point about studying the greats, and what's a good way to present statistics, just some of the things we covered there. So really, really interesting conversation. This week, it's sort of like we moved to the opposite end of the hemisphere of the brain. And this is more about some topics that I've talked about here, abundance mindset, staying positive, staying focused. I listened to a podcast called Positive Head, which is really inspiring because all the speakers he has on there cover the topic of raising your consciousness, being positive, having an abundance mindset. And so I've been listening for probably a couple of months now, and I reached out, and he was more than happy to come on. And as you'll see from the interaction, we're really vibing from moment one, and we go an hour plus. And I think you all know that when it goes that long, it's for a reason, and it's because we're just hitting it off really, really well. So we covered a wide range of topics there. One thing that I thought was really interesting is this concept that he brought up. It's a phrase that he mentioned, and he was asking, what vibrational pool are you playing in? I thought that was so fantastic. You'll hear that towards the end of the conversation. But it's really this idea of raising your vibration, your frequency, like be around people that you want to be around, that motivate you. We can even tie this back to the Jim Rohn quote of, you are the 5 people you most associate yourself with. But it was just interesting to have this discussion about all these things that are, I think for podcasters, it's really speaks to mindset. And what do we want to get accomplished? Why do we get on a microphone every single week? What do we want to do? What's the message we want to convey? What's the impact we want to have? And what's the effect we want to have on people's days? And so I think in some way, a lot of what we talked about was along those topics, and it's really a fascinating conversation. I really had a lot of fun. I really think you're going to enjoy this one. So I'm really interested in your feedback at the end of the conversation. So stay tuned towards the end. We've got a really funny retention hashtag. And if you're a new listener, that's something we put at the end of the show to just see who's paying attention. And we tag myself and we tag the guest. And my name is Harry Duran. I do this every week, typically around Monday. Last week it came out a little bit late, so apologies for that. But I'm back on track this week, and I'm really happy to have you guys on board. And also, we have our ongoing new sponsor for the show, CastSource. I'll tell you a little bit about that at the end of the interview. So let's jump right in. Our conversation, our positivity flow extravaganza with Mr. Brandon Beachum. So, Brandon Beachum, host of the Positive Head podcast, thank you so much for making time to join me on Podcast Junkies.
Well, Mr. Harry, thank you so much for having me, because this is definitely an honor and a privilege. And to sit on the other side and have questions shot my way, it's nice. Thank you.
It must be nice to be able to, I see we're on video now. You're just sitting back with your arms behind your head, relaxed. You don't, you don't have to worry.
I don't got to think of anything. Yeah, exactly.
So let's jump into what you do when you actually have prep for a guest. How much research do you put in for the guests that you have on your show?
Oh, man. Honest answer. It depends on the guest, because in some cases, I've landed guests that are like, on my wish list since, pre-podcast. Like, I want to talk to, Eben Alexander one day about his experience in the afterlife, or Marion Goodell, CEO of Burning Man. I'm a longtime burner. And so people like that I know a lot about and have, sort of followed their stories. And then others are I'm less knowledgeable about. And it really has honestly, sometimes I've went in with very little information except for basics. And other times it's, I have a sort of a deep understanding of and have read their books or things like that. So really it's kind of all across the spectrum. It depends on who it is.
Do you find that the ones, the guests that you connect with more because it's either a subject that you're passionate about or it's someone that you've been following for a long time, you find that those conversations flow a bit easier just because you're so immersed in the conversation?
That's an interesting question. And it's, once again, I don't have a definitive answer for you. It's been mixed, although I will say this. And with the format of the Positive Head podcast, for anyone who's listening and isn't familiar, I do 5 episodes a week, interview on Wednesday, and then 4 days to give me the opportunity to spew whatever is on my mind with my co-host Dalien. And those are shorter episodes, normally 30 minutes or so, but it's us talking about various things. Vibration raising, I guess you could say, topics and so forth. But talking to Dalien just the other day on the show, and I was telling him, I was like, interestingly enough, some of the bigger interviews that I've had, the ones who are, best-selling authors, and I've, been very fortunate. The show's just at a year in May. It was a year old. And I've had some really amazing guests. And it's kind of funny. Some of the bigger guests have been the most scattered, it felt like, and the hardest to connect with. Whereas others who maybe, aren't as notable in the public eye and so forth, but just some amazing, very easily flowing conversations. But, and that's not to say every single one, but it seems like the bigger the guest, the more like time crunch there is, the more sort of they're thinking about jumping on a plane 5 minutes from after they get off the call. And, I've got 4 other interviews today and they're not quite as present. And I guess that's one of the challenges that probably comes with, getting more and more notoriety and so forth, is spreading yourself thin. So I've kind of noticed that. So, yeah.
So thinking as we're on Skype, and listeners of the show will know that I have video Skype for the interviews for the most part, because it lets me connect with my guests on a more intimate basis. And even though you guys only hear the audio, I think there's really some power in connecting one-to-one.
Usually.
Yeah. And what I'm really liking about the setup that you have is you obviously have got you spent some time in picking your equipment. I believe that's the Heil PR40 that you got there.
This is actually a Rode.
Oh, it's a Rode. Okay.
NTK.
Okay.
And then, so you've got the Rode NTK, and then you've got a really nice setup, which is the logo of your podcast as a decal on your back wall. So it seems like you went in this, and I don't know what was inspiring you when you got started, but where did you learn about what you wanted to do for your podcast as you were in the beginning stages, and who was inspiring you? Because it really seems like you wanted to start off on the right foot.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And Harry, I started maybe 20 years ago on I guess you could say a spiritual journey. Really, I was raised very conservative Christian. I had an experience meeting someone who opened my eyes to things outside of the box of that sort of world. And this is, I was about 20 years old at the time. And so it really got me open-minded, and I started reading a lot of information, different spiritual books, metaphysical books, self-help books, things like that, just devouring stuff. And it just started ringing so true to me, sort of this concept that we're all literally one in separate bodies, and we're one with the source that created all things. And as a result, we have the abundance of the universe at our disposal. It's a matter of remembering and reconnecting and all these things. So as I sort of digested this information, as I often will say on my show, there's nothing I can tell you about this that you don't already know. It's a matter of remembering what we've forgotten. And that's sort of the game that we play, throughout eternity. We choose to forget, have amnesia so that we can remember, and it makes it all mean something and gives us context, right? Can't know up without down. You can't know love, which is the source of it all, without hate, negativity, pain, suffering, so that's part of what we're doing collectively. And so for me, as I started to sort of tap into this information, it became a remembering. It just like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is how it works. This is how the world works. And I would talk to Harry, anyone who would listen about it. I'm a very passionate, kind of energetic, positive person. And so I was so hyped up on this, and I would talk to people, and people would like nod their head. Okay. Like, you're crazy. What are you smoking? Or that's very interesting, and kind of go back to whatever they believed before I got a hold of them and started bending their ear. So finally, it came to a point where I started to have, a knowing at some point that part of my path would be to help to raise consciousness and to bring some of this information that I was so passionate about to, other people. And I'd had impact one-on-one on many people where it sort of shifted their focus and perspective because of our interaction. I wanted more of that, where you get what you give because it's all an extension of self. So finally, I don't know really how it took me this long. It's like, what is the best way? I finally freed up from, sort of the day-to-day drudgery of a job with starting a company that, grew from, me to 100 people. And, I, for the first time in my life, had freedom. I stopped working day to day, a couple of years ago there, and handed the reins off to my partners at the time. And I said, okay, now I've got time to really focus on this passion. What's the best medium for someone like me? Well, my friends and family's ears are bleeding from hearing me talk about this stuff all the time. So I need to, creating a podcast just seemed like a very natural way. And what I love about podcast is, everything is energy, everything is vibration. We know that from a scientific standpoint. I certainly believe it from a spiritual standpoint. So you put your vibration out there, and it's just like if I have a guitar and you have a guitar and I pluck a string, the same string is going to vibrate, right? It's in resonance. So that's what happens. You put your information out there, and those that are resonating on a similar vibration are going to find it. So it's great. And it's grown. It's, actually today was sort of breaking my own personal record in downloads. And that's been kind of happening every week or 2 weeks, and it continues to grow and expand. And it's been really the most rewarding thing ever. I'm sure you get it when you have someone write in and tell you how much they're enjoying what you're doing. Or, I have people that write in and say that what you're doing has changed my life. Like, there's nothing that I could ask for that's more rewarding than that. So that might be a little longer answer than you wanted, but I tend to do that sort of thing. So,
the beauty of this show is that I give guests as much room, as much time as they need, and the episodes have gone anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half. So I think cool. Just however long it takes to tell the story is what I always say.
Cool.
So where did you go for information? Is it something that you had because you're technical in nature, or you just felt there was resources that you found for this?
Oh, good question. Okay, so as I mentioned, I have a co-host that I do for daily episodes in addition to the weekly interviews. And the interviews are with what I like to refer to as consciousness change makers. But Dalien is his name. And Dalien and I were in a band for many years called Kundalini, and that's how I ended up in California, Southern California, from the East Coast originally. And we moved out to make it in the music business, and it was cool. I mean, we had some really, at the time, this is around 2000 or so, we got a development deal with a major record label, moved out to California, played with some really big bands. I still have flyers from it was like Us, Hybrid Theory, who went on to change their name to Linkin Park a few months later, Hoobastank, Alien Ant Farm, all these bands that went on to be really big. And I always remember that particular show that I still have that flyer for. The sound guy came up to me after, he goes, "You know what?" And we were the last band to sound check. He goes, "I've seen a lot of bands sound checking, and you guys really have something special." And I always think back to that because the irony is, all the bands on that bill went on to be like really big. And we didn't. And, I always laughing, jokingly say in another timeline, Linkin Park is serving you hamburgers and we were like the biggest band in the world. But it was cool. Our bass player's brother, he was a drummer in No Doubt. So we had a lot of experience with music equipment and so forth. Yeah. So like this microphone, this was a microphone, 5-6 years ago, Dalien and I went on and did a solo project that actually I just recently put on SoundCloud just for some old fans. I never even really put it out there, but it's try-be. Try-be is SoundCloud /try-be. And it's really, really fun, So we just would make music. We were making music and had the equipment around, and here we are. It's like, okay, I want to do a podcast. Dalien is very proficient with production and stuff like that, so he handles all the editing. And so it made it very easy to dust off the old mic. We hadn't used it in years, and here it is getting used like 5 days a week now. So,
well, there's someone that would make the case, Brandon, that you really found your calling then, because if I don't think it was as much as there's one party that would like to think that the music, if they had taken off, where your career would have taken, but obviously there's other stories. You just have to watch VH1 Behind the Music to know how some of those end up, and so
yeah.
So I'm wondering if if you think about it sometimes as because of what you've chosen, this concept of raising positivity, how maybe in a way that much aligns much more with what your true calling might be.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I was trying to achieve through the music project. A lot of the things we would talk about, even at the time. This is going back to early 2000s. We would put Alex Gray artwork behind us, and I'd have lyrics that people were like, "Okay, what are you talking about exactly?" And now I'm a big part of the transformational festival community. I go to a lot of Burning Man style events, Lightning in a Bottle. I've interviewed a lot of the guys like who throw Lightning in a Bottle or Lucidity Festival, friends of mine, and so it's funny because I go to these events now and all these artists are into consciousness and spirituality. And I'll see, we used to, paint chakras on our singer. I was the MC in the band, and then my good friend was a singer, and we would paint chakras on him. And now I'll see like big versions of kind of what we were doing 15 years ago on this grand scale, and everyone gets it. And I'm just like, we were just a little ahead of our time, But it's funny that you asked that, because actually, the podcast, the daily recording that I did, we're recording now. It's evening time. This morning, I recorded the daily episode coming out, and the next actually Monday. It's Friday now, and it was about this very topic. Part of the thing that I piped in was, it was a talk. Actually, Oprah Winfrey and what was the guy's last name? I'm blanking on it right now, but you can hear it on our show. And he basically was talking. It was really insightful. He was talking about how sometimes your dream. What happens is you have these dreams to get somewhere in life, to make it. And you get attached to these particular versions of your dream. And he's like, what people don't realize is a lot of times that dream is a delivery mechanism to sort of lead you to your actual destiny. So it's okay to have dreams, but don't cling to them like it's got to come in this shape, form, or fashion, because it has that dream did serve its purpose if it led you to what it was supposed to lead you to. So it's really synchronistic. And that's one of the things that I always feature on my show. A question with every guest is a story of synchronicity or serendipity or a positive paranormal event. And this is definitely a synchronicity. A few hours ago, what did I record about? This exact question you asked me, and it is like, yeah, it led me to where I am here and now. And, it's really, I think it's really important to find a balance too, when you're learning to create your reality and so forth, and this law of attraction kind of idea and manifesting. It's all very real, but it's sort of I call it, the art of living it's a delicate balance, because you want to put out what it is you want to create, and you have these dreams and these aims and these goals, but then you've got to learn to release them. So it's put the intention, put the energy, now release. I don't need it to show up in that way at all for me to be happy, fulfilled, or anything. These are just, this is the direction I'm going now, and that's subject to change at any moment. And whatever comes, I know a master is someone who embraces whatever shows up, because she knows that a higher version of self has put it there. You don't always get what you want, but you get what you need, right?
Yeah, you get what you need at this point in time to take you to the next level of your development.
Absolutely.
So when you thought about how you were going to structure this show, it seems pretty organized. You the fact that you're doing 5 days a week, which is a lot. I know a lot of podcasters, they're inspired to do that straight out of the gate. And in the entrepreneurial community, there's someone by the name of John Lee Dumas, who has the Entrepreneur on Fire podcast, and everyone tries to mimic him, only to find out 3 months later that there's no way they can keep up with that pace.
Totally.
So was it 5 days from the very beginning?
No, actually, okay. I was. It started out with just the interviews for maybe the first 6 months, and then May 2015 was when I launched the podcast, and then probably October I started doing the daily shows. And what really, as I mentioned earlier, interviewing is a lot of times hearing about the other person, and I've had I just have a lot to say. I have a lot that I want to get out, a lot that needs, I got to find somewhere to vent this stuff, because it's just sort of, bubbling through me at all times. So I finally said, you know what, to my friend Dalien, who is actually handling all the editing, and like I said, my old bandmate, and we've been, friends for forever. And he's such a good balance for me too, because I'm a little spazzy, and he's one of those guys who has so much knowledge about all kinds of subjects, and is just a very good complement, balancing energy for me. So I said, you know what? Why don't you step out from behind the editing bay and you start co-hosting some daily shows with me? And we set up a loose format for that, but really we wing it most days. For the most part, we get up and say, what are we going to talk about today? Well, this person wrote in with a question. Let's address that. We have a sort of a loose format where I like to do what I call, positive pondering. So I'm such a nerd for cool quotes, right? So I'll take a quote that I really love, that really inspires me, and then I'll give a positive pondering breakdown. So here's what it means to me. Here's what I think the author was trying to get at. And so we'll do, maybe a story that's mysterious or positive and inspiring in the news, and then a positive pondering breakdown, then take a question from the audience, sometimes pipe in a few minutes, like I referenced earlier, Abraham Hicks or Wayne Dyer, or someone that somehow maybe is addressing what I just talked about with the person that wrote in. So, and it just seems to kind of come together, and I like keeping it loose like that too. And then we'll share some music. We're big music fans, right? So share some artists, that we're really feeling and helping to kind of get it out there at the same time, because we've been on the other end of that, artist trying to get exposure. So yeah, we just we have that sort of loose format with the daily shows, and it's really magical how it can come together, because a lot of times what's happening in my own life on a given day, I'll use that as a launching off point. What am I feeling? Am I feeling, hitting a wall with this, or frustration with that, or or someone writes in, and it's, it's crazy, Harry, how often I hear from people. It is, they'll just say it over and over. I hear it probably 5 times a week from people writing in saying, it is just crazy how often what you talk about is what's happening in my life. And my explanation for that is, as I mentioned earlier, it's all source is all things. We're all one with this, you're talking to an extension of self in another body. The consciousness that animates me is the same consciousness that animates you, right? But so we're separate in we're the same in one sense, but we're also separate. It's a divine dichotomy, two apparently contradictory things that both hold true depending on what perspective you're looking at it through. So when you have people that are finding out of all the things coming at you in the world, all the, things vying for your attention and programming and shows and music and, so much out there. If someone is tuning into my little podcast, the few thousand people or whatever it's at a day currently, it's like, out of the 7 billion on the planet, I would say, yes, we're all one. Those people happen to be very close on the family tree. That is, let's call source, God, your higher self, whatever you want to call it. It's a tree. Well, they happen to be on the same branch and leaves that are right next to mine. So that's why they're resonating. That's why you and I are connecting. We're very closely connected on this family tree. And here we are bumping up against each other in this life, And so when that happens, of course, there's going to be overlap as in what's happening in my world. There's some reflection of happening in your world, or a listener who writes in what's happening in their world. What are they struggling with? It's like it's literally soul family, and that's something that actually, one of the interviews that I referenced, Dr. Eben Alexander, best-selling author, Proof of Heaven, the neurosurgeon whose brain went brain dead, went into a coma for a week, didn't believe in any of this quote unquote woo-woo stuff, and came out with this whole experience on the other side. And one thing that he talked about was how we reincarnate with soul family. And, even a lot of times your biggest challenges and the villains in your story are who you're closest with on the other side, because they're giving you the opportunity to grow that your soul actually longs for. And that's when you can start seeing that sort of perspective. It's, you're really getting somewhere, in my opinion.
Have you given some thought to where you are in your journey? Because a lot of times, Brandon, when we try to measure progress, we look back like a week and we're like, oh man, I'm not making the moves I want to be making, or even a month, and we're like, if you connect it to anything like losing weight or just trying to get a meditation practice going or something like that. But now that you've had the luxury of having the podcast for a year, do you look back and can you see like the progress that you made, and are there some things that jump out at you?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I just reached out to, I don't know if you know Don Miguel Ruiz. I had reached out to his people last, 9 months ago about interviewing him.
The Four Agreements, right?
The Four Agreements, yeah. Right. And incredible book. If anyone hasn't read it, I highly recommend it. It's one of those sort of quick reads that is very empowering and powerful information. And bestseller for years and years and years. And so I reached out to them, and very cool, people that, Carla, who I talked to over there, and at the time, they kind of, okay, how many listeners do you have and things like that. And I was still, the small little podcast I just launched, but she's like, you know what, why don't you talk to his co-author? He had a new book that was just coming out, The Toltec Art of Life and Death. And he co-authored it with Barbara Emrys. And why don't you interview Barbara? So I did an interview with Barbara, went great, awesome. And so I was thinking, now his son, Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., came out with a new book. And I was like, oh, I should reach back out, because actually I talked about that with her 9 months ago. And I pulled up the email the other day, and I had seen what I'd talked to her 9 months ago, and the form I'd filled out, and I realized that my listener base has grown tenfold since that 9 months ago.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's been a really cool thing to, and like anything, you got to be really careful not to get caught up on the results and the number. As podcasters, we can get very caught up on all that stuff. And I learned that lesson with music. I really did. It's like, because it started out with our band. It was so much fun. And then it became about making it. And it turned into this kind of grind and job. And so for me, it has been such a labor of love. And every time I get that feedback, that happens more and more about the impact that I'm having on someone's life. It's like, that is all the payment in the world. And, I'm excited about where it's going and some of the plans that I have. I have some pretty big plans with, the podcast and my site, which is positivehead.com, and, turning it into more of like a network where people can connect and share and things like that. And so I've got a lot of big plans with the podcast and with, the site and so forth. But at the same time, I got to be very careful. And just like I mentioned earlier, the art of living. Have your aims, have your goals, drop your expectation. You don't need any of it to happen to be fulfilled. Happiness is literally a choice, and right here and right now, it's just such a blessing to be what it is, and I don't need it to be any more. If it impacts one person, positively, I'm super blessed, because you get what you give. That's the thing that so few people, they don't get, and more are getting. If it's true, what I'm stating, you're me and I'm you. Whatever I do for you, I'm doing to an extension of self, and I will feel the energetic repercussions of that. And so what you find is the universe sets it up very cleverly, where you'll find the opportunity to give away what you want for yourself to someone else. I always say, when you see that, do it, because that is how we grow. A friend of mine, Halcyon, put it recently, and I just love it. So I've been sharing it a few months ago when I was connecting with him. He was like, he's really into gifting and so forth. And he was talking about how he realized that, when I have an energetic exchange with someone, if I buy something from you, for example, it's a sum zero. I give you something, money, right? And you give me something, and it cancels each other out. But if I gift something to you coming from the heart, it's a sum two, because I am instantly, releasing all these feel-good chemicals, physically, spiritually, everything about it feels amazing. For you as the recipient of the gift, it feels amazing. And actually, it's a sum three if someone's observing it, because we know if someone sees an act of kindness, they have all the endorphins, everything is released in their brain, and they're actually gaining from it too. So it's really interesting when you look at it from that perspective. The secret to everything that you want for yourself is in giving, and the reason being is because the underlying sort of logic behind it is because you can only give to self. It's always another you. And that's how we all get there, by helping others.
Yeah, it's a topic I've talked about on several occasions on the show, and you, the listeners, know that I'm a big proponent of abundance mindset, of really this flow that has to happen. It's almost like whatever you want more of in your life, you just have to give it with the confidence that that's going to come back to you, and to your point, tenfold. So I'm really happy that you brought that back up. I'm wondering if you could talk about, as you were thinking about the ideas for the show, how you settled in on this concept of positivity, and why that was the driving force for what the show, how are you going to structure the show?
Great question. Well, part of my whole understanding of, what I refer to as the ultimate nature of reality, and what I'm touching on here is, you are one with the source that created all things. So you are literally the creator and created rolled into one, right? So energy is neutral by default. What I do with it determines whether it's positive or negative. So what do I want for myself? I want to create positive. What do we all want? We want to be happy. We want to be fulfilled. We want to be abundant. We want to be loved. We want to be loving. Those are the things that everyone's craving for. A lot of people are reaching for that in ways that are masked by their dysfunction or sickness or separation from understanding. But once you start to kind of remove some of these masks and barriers to understanding, you realize I've got to find a way to create a positive energy around me if I want to manifest more, those sorts of things, right? So how do I drum up that vibration? It's all about drumming up the vibration of what you want to see more of. So for me, I always say, there's no selfless act. And I love studying about this stuff, reading books of the people that I interview or following what it is they're doing. So for me, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. It's one thing to understand all these things conceptually, and it's another to put it into practice. I've understood this stuff for 20 years. I'm just getting, dare I say, good at really keep maintaining an elevated vibration despite what's happening external of self, because most people are like a puppet on a string. If this happens, I'm happy. If this happens, I'm sad. They don't realize that there is no out there. Everything they're seeing external is a reflection of their internal state. They're creating it. So for me, it was like, okay, how do I selfishly, in a good kind of selfish, spread more positivity, drum up more of that vibration. Make sure every day I'm setting my vibrational tone, so that I'm in the sort of playing in the pool of what it is I want to see more of. What better way than to get up every morning, have a cup of coffee and start recording, talking about this stuff. I instantly set my tone, and of course, sharing it with others, and what I'm putting out just comes back, and it turns into this abundant flow, and it's magical, and anyone can do it.
Yeah, that's what's I think such an important message to deliver, because a lot of times people hear other folks on the radio and they think, wow, what is it about? What is it about Brandon? Man, he's so lucky. He's got a perfect life. Everything seems to go well for him. And they hear you. They only hear you focus on this aspect of positivity day in and day out on your show and in your conversations with your guests. But I think what you've just alluded to is the fact that it is a daily work, and it's something that you need to, if it's something that you are striving to, it's something that you need to build into your routine and have something where, if it's something that you want to practice and it's something that it's a muscle that you want to build, you have to work at it. And just like you would do if you were going to the gym.
Yeah, that's one of the things that if you read in the Positive Head podcast description, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration, and that is the underlying aim of what we do. It's like soul food for thought, right? You same way it's important what you're putting into your body. It's important what you're putting into your mind and into your heart. And so you can, and I even say also, we constantly circle back around the same topics, talking about them time and time again. Repetition. It's just like working out or anything like that. You said it best. It's like working out a muscle. So it becomes, paramount that you take control of sort of your course and understanding. The most important thing for me to do is to feel good, to get into, Abraham Hicks. If any of you out there are not familiar with Abraham Hicks, go to YouTube, look up some videos. She talks about getting in the vortex, getting in this vibrational zone, because this is where you set your point of attraction. You're literally going to attract that which you're emanating. So stop reacting to what's out there, because there is no out there. If you want to know what you'll see tomorrow, look at what you're feeling today. And that's the thing that throws people in this third dimensional reality. They don't get the correlation between what they're seeing in their world and the vibration that they previously offered. There's a lag. They say on the other side, you think it's instantaneous, right? So it's like, I see the connection here. I just thought about, marshmallows and they appeared. Whereas in this thing, you thought about them for, 6 months ago and now they're appearing, and you don't make the correlation. So I don't know if marshmallows is a good example, but you get the point, right? Yeah. And so if everything that you're seeing in your world is a reflection of some vibration that you've previously offered. And don't beat yourself up for it. The way through it, if you don't like it, is to love it and stop and surrender to it. Acceptance of what you've created, because it led you here. Just like we were talking about those dreams that maybe didn't come true. They led you to where you are to be next. The caterpillar has to go through the cocoon phase, which maybe isn't so beautiful sometimes, to become the butterfly. And that's okay. And as soon as you can accept what is, that's how you move on to what you want to see more of. That is the key. And, most people are doing something like work in order to have something like money, in order to be something like happy, right? Do, have, be. It's actually the opposite. They've got the wrong formula. You be something like happy, you find yourself doing and having the things that make you happy. So that's the beautiful thing, is the shortcut to all that you want. The path to it is in managing your vibration. And that's, essentially what the show is all about. How do I help manage my own vibration and in yours as well? If you benefit, even better, and that's honestly what it is.
Yeah, they're along, they're along for the ride, and they reap the benefits of, what you're putting out there. You mentioned this relationship that you had with money, and I heard you talk about it, several episodes ago. There was a point where you had to reframe your relationship with money. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. It's been quite an interesting ride for me. Harry, I've experienced a lot of ups and downs with money. And like I said, I moved out to California, 20 years ago to make it in a band. And, at the time I was a starving artist trying to make it. And then I would just sort of work to, I did sales related stuff, and I was very good at that. So oh, I need to pay the bills. I better focus on work again. And then, and it was a lot of that for years and years. And so I kind of rode multiple ups and downs with money. And I attempted to launch basically a social network, a music distribution platform, like 2009 or so. And I had an investor, and we kind of launched, and it started growing. And then next thing I know, a bunch of tragedy hit. My brother, who's my partner, had a tragedy with a girlfriend committing suicide. And the one investor I had pulled their money out. And at the time, I was sort of like sitting there frustrated, knowing this is my path. And I was like, you know what? I understand I'm one with the abundance that created all things. I need to manifest the resources to do this on my own. Screw going out and trying to raise money and deal with someone else. And, I need to call forth this abundance, right? All the stuff I talk about and believe, I can do it. Well, I ended up on a friend's couch, but had an idea that, the universe led me to that was not at all in line with what I thought I was going to do, and it was a vacation rental business or idea that I had. And I started it, and it went from me to 100 people, over the course of 5 years. In 2015, we were, Inc. 5,000 list. We were the 569th fastest growing company in the country, and it was like, wow, here we are. We grew to over $10 million in sales, and 1 in 10,000 companies do this. So for every other entrepreneur, for me doing that, 9,999 entrepreneurs didn't make it, right? And I know why it's happening. I'm learning to get into vibrational alignment with abundance, right? But then I always say the part of our path in this world is 2 step forwards, 1 step back, 2 step forward. One of my favorite books is a book called Oneness by a woman named Rasha, and it's supposedly channeled material. I can't speak to that, whether it is or isn't. You and I talked about this a little bit earlier. The information is so powerful and inspired. I know something magical is going on there. And I always refer to it as sort of like the guidebook for ascension, right? As you become awake and aware, this is telling you what to expect. And part of it is you reach these new plateaus, and all of a sudden, backtrack, you're knocked down 10 levels because you're still working out that energy. And so that's kind of what happened to me in the last maybe 6 months ago. I got to the point with this company. I started on a friend's couch with $20 in my pocket to an offer to be bought out for $30 million. And here I am. I've shown that I know about this law of attraction stuff, and look what I've done. And within 12 hours of that offer, our number one rental stream, vacation management and rental is what we did, was through Booking.com, the biggest online travel agency in the world. They owned by Priceline. And we had doing almost $1 million a month in rental through them. They called us and said, I know we've been working with you for 4 years here, but we just partnered with the biggest vacation ownership developer in the world. And basically 2 multi-billion-dollar companies got together, and we were squashed in the middle. So within 12 hours, Harry, of this offer, we got hit by an asteroid, essentially. And then it was like something out of a movie. And then it went from bad to worse. The quote unquote, good friend of mine who I'd brought in as a partner tried to sort of deceptively take what was left. And it turned into this ugly thing where two of my partners were, doing some very, shady things, and, a lot of ego and arrogance involved there. And so anyway, it turned into this ugly thing. And I don't know if you've seen the movie Straight Outta Compton.
Oh, yeah.
But okay, so you know how at the end, Dr. Dre walks into Suge Knight, and death row's on top of the world, the biggest thing ever, and he goes, "Here, you can have it. I don't want any of it. Just get me away from your energy." That's sort of what I went through, and that was literally Christmas time. And it was very hard, very difficult, but at the same time, I understand the lessons in it. The lessons I had to learn about giving away personal power to people who were not in the same mindset. And, it's all about control and power, and not about, honesty and helping people and being positive, and I learned a very valuable lesson. And so here I am. I've got multiple new projects that I'm involved with that I'm very excited about. And, I have no doubt that all that abundance that I was was dangled this close to me, right in my face, I know it's just going to come back many, many fold, because abundance is a choice. It's just a vibrational pool that anyone can align with. I'm not special. You can do it. The listeners can do it. It's just a matter of learning. And I'm still getting my sea legs. I'm still learning this stuff. And that's all there is to it. And I learned some valuable lessons in that. And now I'm so excited about the things that are sort of popping up as potentials in my world right now, and I've got multiple projects that could lead me there manyfold that I'm just that are in much earlier stages, but nonetheless, and at the end of the day, it's not even about that. Money is just energy, right? The only reason I've intended to manifest a lot of it, and I've talked about it since I was a little kid doing that, is because at this point in my life, when I was a kid, I did have the Lamborghini puzzle that I put together on my wall. Now I don't care about Lamborghinis or any of that. I mean, I like nice things, but I'm not really into, I just want to help the world. I want to use that. I want to use and channel and, that abundance that, we're one with what created all things. We're one with what created the cosmos, you and I, all of us. Like, think about that resource. You're the one who actually designed all this. You just have amnesia. So it's all about, taking and that power back. And in my case, I got hit by an asteroid. Great learning lesson, expensive learning lesson. Now let's get down to business, and we'll see, we'll see what comes next. But I'm very confident there's plenty more abundance where that came from. So
that's a fantastic story. And it's really it's, just listening to it, it's just eliciting this roller coaster ride of emotions, and I can't even imagine what it must have been like to actually go through it. But, to have, everything that you're working for manifest itself in a way where you feel like you actually made it. And then, like you said, within the span of, a day, have everything turn around. You have to be in a really stable place for it not to just totally throw your life into just complete upheaval. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that, probably wouldn't be able to recover from something like that.
You're right. There's a lot of people who would take that, and I always say it on my show, it's all about the spin of your story. You're making it, you are the creator of your own movie. You're the lead actor and director in your own private movie, your own universe. And so it's all about you making up the story that you want to see more of. I've said for 20 years, I don't believe in getting sick. If someone has the flu and says, stay away from me, I go hug them and announce to them, I don't believe in getting sick. As a result of doing that, I reinforce that concept. Now they believe it too, and they're sending that signal to the universe. Guess what, Harry? I'm not going to say I've never gotten sick, but I haven't been in the hospital since the day I was born, and I can count on, two hands the time I can remember throwing up or being sick, And so I've just created that. I made it up. Just something I made up, and I made it real. And that's the thing that we're finding, even with quantum physics, and why I'm so interested in have people like Nassim Haramein on the show and these quantum physicists, or Dr. Bruce Lipton, because what we're finding is, it's all, reality is completely malleable. It's like consciousness determines what we see. We're creating our reality with our beliefs. Dr. Bruce Lipton wrote The Biology of Belief. Basically, you've always heard it's in your genes. It's in your genes. Well, your beliefs turn your genes on and off. So it's not in your genes. You're in your genes with your consciousness and your thoughts and your beliefs. And that's an empowering thing. So what am I doing here? I could have taken that story and said, poor me, 1 in 10,000 chance. I was right there, and I got screwed, and the universe hates me. And no. Look at that story. Look at that big, fat lump of coal the universe I can't imagine the diamond that's hiding under that. Holy smokes. Wait till we see what comes next. Wow. I thought that was big. $30 million. How about 3 billion or, 300 million or I'm just telling the story. And as I tell the story here now, I'm reinforcing that was just a small little bump in a huge, upswing that is coming my way. And I'm choosing to tell that story. And so I get up every day believing that. And guess what I'll attract? And then how much better is my story when I get there now? Right. and I can share this with other people, and it inspires someone to do the same thing and realize that, because I'll be the first to say it, I'm no better than anyone listening. Like, don't think that, listeners, for a moment, that I've got something that you don't, or anyone for that matter has something that you don't. If you're tuning into this, that's because I'm reflecting a part of self to you right now. It's always happening. Everything that shows up in your world is a reflection of some part of self. The good, the bad, the inspirational stuff, the negative stuff. It's all a feedback loop for you to learn about self from. So someone does something wrong to me these days, maybe for 2 seconds I'm mad at them, and I start thinking, what is this telling me about myself that I need to learn? And that's when you start getting into the major leagues, when you start understanding life's happening for you, not to you. And it's a feedback loop showing you where you need to go next, what you need to work on next. And it's so empowering.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of that recently, this whole concept of one door closing, another one opening. And obviously it comes with, as a result of my increased focus on my meditation practice, and I do daily intentions. I've talked about that with a good friend of mine, Morgan Dix, who's got the One Mind Meditation podcast, and we dove deep on that. And I really think you're creating this muscle that prepares you for what may come. And I've had some stuff that you would maybe call a setback, or clients that could possibly manifest that would take my company to another level, and then like the day before the meeting gets canceled, and in the past, those things would just completely derail me. And it's funny, now they bring us this smile to my face, because I'm like, wow, this is so interesting that this door just closed. I can't wait to see like which one is going to open as a result of what just happened.
Yeah, you got it, man. That is the formula. Once you get that formula, it's like, it's always happening for me. I don't need to be attached. Abraham Hicks talks about it in a way that is really interesting, and I really resonate with. She says, whatever you can dream up and think is the best version of what your world could be, that's the least version of what your higher self can come up with. So stop trying to control it. You can have a goal, you can have an aim, you can have a dream, and you can go in that direction, but release your attachment to how this stuff is going to show up. And when you can get out of your own way, then it can really start to flow. It can come through like wildfire, But the problem is we're so attached to, oh no, it didn't happen the way I thought. Poor me. This sucks. Life is bad. Now what vibrational pool are you playing in? Well, guess what? Whatever where attention goes, energy flows. You're giving energy to the fact that it sucks and it's bad and poor me. And guess what you're going to see more of? It's like saying to the universe, send me more of that. Send me more of what I don't want, and that's because you are a creator, and you've got to be very aware of that fact. You are creating it with your vibration.
I love that what you just said. I almost envision it as a t-shirt. What vibrational pool are you playing in?
Done. 50-50 split.
Let's do it.
See how entrepreneurial minds work?
It's one of those things, like it's one of those t-shirts you see, and it would just bring a smile to your face, as you're walking down the street, you're
Totally.
like, oh yeah, that's cool. And it just gets people out of, what happens, Brandon, is people need to get out of their own head sometimes. They're so stuck in like the woe is me mentality, and all they can focus on is what's going wrong in their life. And this harkens back to what we talked about earlier in this conversation. If they could just like not think about themselves and think about like, I know like I'm in a shitty place right now, but let me go make someone else's day for, let me go work in a soup kitchen. Let me give, cash out $20 in singles and just go randomly give them to people, homeless people in the streets, but just get out there. And then you realize, very, very quickly, as bad as you think your life is, it's really not compared to like people who are really struggling.
Absolutely. And, you said a very important thing there, get out of your head. And, that's one of the things that I really am focused on, even more than a positive head, is a, open heart, right? And moving into your heart space. And what, many people have not really grasped is, we've become such analytical beings, mind-centered analytical beings, and actually we're designed to navigate from our heart center. The heart sends twice as many signals to the brain as the brain does to the heart, and it's really the space that we're meant to think of. Your center of gravity is like in your face, right? We all think of that. Move it into your heart. and then see the difference that you feel. And that is the place where all the divine guidance comes from, and the wisdom, not to say the brain isn't incredible, it is. The mind is incredible, but it's sort of there's this imbalance that's happened, and really the heart is meant to be the pilot. And I think more and more people are starting to learn to, do meditations to move into your heart space and things like that. And I interviewed Deborah Roseman from Heart Math Institute. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
But they're doing a lot of interesting research into this, and tools to to accentuate this whole concept. And it's truly empowering, getting out of the mind so much and moving into the heart, and trust and faith, and that whatever's happening is happening for a very good reason. My job is to try and interpret it and to tell the story in a way that serves me. Tell the story no matter how. I'm going to make this story, I'm going to spin it into something that's serving me. And eventually that may turn out to be something else. Great, spin it again. Great, spin it again. And eventually you land in a place that's just, everything that you dreamed of and more.
What I like about some of those recent interviews you've had is that they're with people from the what you would call the science realm, or the fact-based realm, if you will, but they're literally talking about concepts that in the past, we didn't have the proper language for, or we just felt like we were coming at it from a place of like just woo-woo concept. But heart math, the conversation you had with Bruce Lipton, the conversation you had with Nassim Haramein, I mean, these are just world-renowned scientists, and they're all coming at it from different places. But I really highly recommend to the listener to check out those specific episodes where you'll see and hear the science of it all broken down in a way that begins to resonate with what we instinctually feel in our gut, or what we've known all along, or to your point, we're awakening to and remembering.
Yeah, it's. I always say science and spirituality are doing a dance right now that is truly incredible and beautiful, and that's why I love the science and the quantum physics. It's all so much pointing to this stuff to be true. Here's why, if the observer is present, if consciousness is present, particles that make up the atoms, are in one physical location. When consciousness isn't present, they're in a state of quantum superposition, meaning all these potentialities at once. It's the same thing. Your life, I always say your life is like plays out at the sort of the corner of free will and destiny. It's because we know time is an illusion. We saw the movie Interstellar, right? That's all based off real science. Time is this illusory thing. Einstein proved that. You shoot me into outer space at light speed. You bring me back a day later. I'm a day older and you've been gone 100 years. So it's all happening. We're in the eternal now, right? You and I happen to be tuned into the channel that is Harry and Brandon having this conversation, but this is actually always happening in eternity, right? And so there's infinite versions of us too. There's the version of us that didn't connect on this podcast. There's the version where Kundalini is the biggest band in the world, right? As I say, and it really is. I really believe it to be so. And I can think of one of my earliest experiences was sitting down with a psychic randomly, at a mall in Georgia, and she's, we walked by, and me and my girlfriend at the time decided to sit down, and she said, "I see you in a cold place like Chicago in business." My jaw hit the floor because I was planning to move to Chicago and work in business at that time. I was in college, and that's what I was going to go do, work for my uncle who lived there. And then she said, "But there's this whole other path for you in California in music. Are you involved in music in any way?" "No, but I love it." And, fast forward a year, with the help of some, magic mushrooms and realizing I'm one with the source that created all things, I'm going to create a band, and had met someone from California who said, "Oh my gosh, I love your band. You guys got to be out there." And voila, here I am. So what was she tapping into? The potential Brandons, right? I've done it all. You've done it all. From this moment forward, from the seat where you're talking to me, there is infinite versions of Harry, I would say. And what do you want to experience? You want to experience the greatest and grandest version, right? The one that's the most rewarding. Well, the good news is you've already done it. It's all already happened in the eternal now. So what does your job become? To get into vibrational alignment with the unfolding of that version. So your job is to manage your vibration and keep it in that elevated, heightened state, so much so that you're literally stepping in and out of realities with your vibration. So it's a fascinating concept when you start to understand this is sort of how reality works. And one of my ideas is to write a book, kind of a choose your own adventure book that kind of shows this, because that's essentially what it's like. So it's where free will meets destiny. It's all already happened, right? But yet there's free will. Which version of it all are you going to pop into your movie player that is your life, right? What DVD are you going to pull off the shelf of the Harry story and watch again? The greatest and grandest version, the best one, right? Of course.
Which plastic disc are you going to insert in your viewfinder?
Exactly. I just saw a thing with Elon Musk last night talking about how someone asked him, do you think we're, in a simulated reality? He's like, well, I think there's a 1 in a billion chance that this is the end of the 3-minute talk was basically there might be a 1 in a billion chance that this is the base level reality. But based on the fact that we can see we had Pong 40 years ago and now look at what we've got and look at where we're going, chances are this is an iteration at some level. And it's really I've heard the guy who made the Sims video game talk about the same thing. It's like we could be sitting on a kid's shelf and some spoiled kid's Xbox 10, and here we are playing out. We know that we're going to be able to create realities like this, but it's like the Russian nested dolls. Yeah. It's all the same stuff. It's all connected. I mean, and when you look at us, you look at everything, what is it? It's light projections. It's particles that aren't solid at all. When we zoom in, they're vibrations of energy, of light popping in and out of existence. We don't know where they come from or where they go to, but they're intelligent when they show up here. So it's like, you're in a movie, you're in a game you're the source, I would say, behind the game that created it. But then you sort of, then you say, okay, I'm going in, however many years ago you were born into this reality. All right, time to go in. I'm going into my avatar, Brandon, this time. I'm going to play out that story. I'm going into my avatar, Harry, and that's a pretty profound perspective. I actually had a friend who's very psychically gifted, and she had, as a kid, she would be around people who were, if they were really happy, she would take on that energy and be like bubbling over. And then if they were negative, she would feel that. And she was so empathic. As she got into her 20s, she had to start numbing herself she would drink like a bottle of vodka. She's Russian. She'd drink a bottle of vodka a day just to numb feeling everything that she felt. So when she started on her journey of healing, one of the things that really helped her was ayahuasca. And on her ayahuasca journeys, as you can imagine, being so psychically sensitive, she had some really profound experiences. And one of the things that she kind of told me about that I thought was fascinating, she said she went to the realm of what she called the oversouls. And she said, you just wouldn't believe how minuscule your life is to your higher self, your oversoul. It's like, literally, she said the way she observed it was us are these oversouls watching their lives play out, sort of like on a movie, like a game, and some of them were very engaged. Oh, what will Brandon do next? What, and others were yawning, kind of bored with watching their avatars. And they were like literally like seconds in their life as you popped in and out of these different lives. But, the way she put it is like, this is just an avatar of a character that you decided to play.
I'm sure we're making the listeners' head spin.
Yeah, well,
and I think what you guys need to understand is that everything comes at the time for you, but that doesn't necessarily when you can absorb it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to take everything that we're saying here and say, okay, I've just got this incredible download of inspiration and I'm going to run with it, because you'll just like explode. Your mind will just get like way overloaded and you won't know where to start. But I think this is the type of conversation that can be a jumping off point for you to go down one of the paths, read one of the books that Brandon has mentioned, or just even, think about a meditation practice, or just something or even just this concept of thinking positive. I mean, that's, even if we broke it down to that and in its most simple is the message that we're delivering, it's fine. This is just one of those things that you go at your own pace. And if you, I think the most important thing is just to start and get on the path, and there is no right or wrong way.
Absolutely. And, you guys can be mad at Harry for bringing me on, because I go from like 0 to 100 pretty quickly. So yeah, yell at Harry. But no, I always say, whatever you do, don't believe me. Don't listen to me. Maybe listen to me with an open mind and be open to it. But you're all intelligent people who make up your own mind and decisions. I always just say, listen with an open mind and go explore this stuff for yourself. Start digging in with an open mind, and the rest will be revealed to you. You know, you're shown as you're ready to be shown. And the more I've opened up, the more I've been shown. And, you know, I mean, the people in my life and the stories that I've heard and that I've come across, and it's, you know, one of the things, of course, I was raised very conservative Christian. And part of the problem that I have with, you know, Christianity, well, I think Jesus was taught love. You know, I don't think he wasn't, I think it got misconstrued as I need to be worshiped and God is this jealous God and all these things. These are kind of man-made concepts. And, you know, what in my, what I find interesting with, you know, religion versus spirituality is, you know, the people that have had quote unquote spiritual experiences, you know, and whether that be through plant medicines like ayahuasca or near-death experience like Eben Alexander or meditation, right? Where people blast off and go connect with all things and come back and say, oh my gosh, we're all God, you know, or we're all source, they're all coming back with sort of the same story for, you know, millions of people, different ways to get there. You know, deep breathing, you can do holotropic breathing, you know, techniques where I've talked to people who just with breathing techniques, it's like taking DMT, the most powerful psychedelic in the world, you know, and they're all coming back with the same kind of story of, or, you know, or perspective of it's all one and it's happening for love, you know, and the separation that is, you know, between you and I is an elaborate illusion. When the game's over, all the chess pieces go back in the same box. And when you can start opening up just to that as a possibility of what's going on and ask, you know, for guidance and just being open, just buckle up your seatbelt because you'll be shown. And so that's why we say, hey, listen to me with an open mind, but whatever you do, don't believe blindly. And I think that's what Terry's saying, or think we're trying to force this down your throat. I'm just kind of a spaz about this stuff. This is part of what I think part of my mission in this avatar, this character is to, you know, I'll say I'm a reminder. You know, I've sort of woken up to remembering who and what I am, and I want to scream it from the rooftop. So it's hard for me to sort of contain it, and it really is, you know, energy that's flowing through me. It's a high. As soon as I start talking about it, you know, it's like I'm more amped than I was when we're talking about, you know, sports or whatever it might be.
So digging into a bit more about Brandon, what would you say is the one most misunderstood thing about you?
The most misunderstood. Oh, wow. That's a great question. You know, one thing, Harry, that I've tried to be really conscious of is being, you know, perceived as egomaniacal, or, you know, because sometimes when people don't understand sort of this perspective, it's like, okay, like, oh, you're God. I see. Yeah. You know, you think you're high and mighty and so much better than, you know, anyone else. And it can be viewed in this way of, you know, if you don't fully understand their perspective, it's like, yeah, I believe I'm the same thing. You know, you take like the great masters like Buddha or Jesus or any of them. What was Jesus saying? I am God, essentially. I and the Father are one. And I think he was saying that about us all. You know, we're all literally it. There is, so I think sometimes it can be taken as, you know, you got to be really careful, you know, with, especially when you're early in the stages of waking up to remembering this stuff and kind of finding your power, is spiritual narcissism. You know, slipping into this idea of like, oh, I am, and you even see this guy JP Sears making videos that are super viral, all kind of joking on, you know, ultra spiritual. I don't know if you've seen the ultra spiritual videos. If you haven't, you probably will. And it's like, you know, kind of poking fun at ultra spiritual people, you know, and it is a thing. You've got to be very careful not to fall into this sort of, oh, here's why I'm so spiritual and so much better than you, and looking down on you, oh, you don't know yet. And so I'm very, you know, conscious of that. And so that's why I constantly say on my show, hey guys, like, this is for me. I need this stuff. You know, we teach best what we most need to learn. I believe that's a very true statement. And so for me, it's like, I need this. I need to make this front and center in my consciousness and awareness, and not slip back into the illusion and believing the day-to-day grind and all these things that can take us out of our awareness. So, yeah, I think that would be maybe it can be misunderstood sometimes. It's like, oh, this guy's just egomaniacal.
Interesting. What have you changed your mind about recently?
Oh, wow. That's another good question. Wow. What have I changed my mind about recently? What have I changed my mind about recently? One of the places that I'm struggling with right now, and I don't know that I can say I've fully changed my mind, but I'm sort of in a state of, I'm not sure, is, okay, so I have multiple projects that I'm working on since the asteroid hit last fall. And one of them is in the same space. It's a travel-related business with my brother. And there's, great potential there. But yet, on one hand, it's like, okay, there's all this potential and a lot of financial potential, but is it in line with my highest calling, right? Is it really in line? You can do anything, you just can't do everything.
Yeah.
And so meanwhile, I'm so passionate about my podcast and I have all these great, exciting plans with positivehead.com. And, I'm really excited to get to working on permanent village infrastructure projects. And there's other, I'm helping my friend with this new peer-to-peer marketplace for musicians called Sesh that's about to come out. And so I'm involved with that. So I have these other, projects, but really, the Positive Head stuff and raising consciousness and a book that I'm working on and all these things. So I kind of am torn. Sometimes I've been thinking to myself, like, here I am spending a lot of my hours in the last few months working on this money-making business, right? But meanwhile, the thing that I'm most passionate about is getting less of my time. And you're saying, okay, well, I need to focus on that because the runway financially is dramatically different than it was, and so, but am I just doing something out of fear, or what if I just threw caution to the wind and dove full force into this passionate stuff that but at the same time, do I want to abandon something that could lead to, $1 billion company that then what good could I do with that? And so, when you ask have I changed my mind, there's some fluctuation and I guess some friction there internally about that. And what I've kind of come to the conclusion of is it will reveal itself where and how I should proceed in the coming months. I'm going to continue on the path that I'm on, kind of dividing my time as it is now. And then I know it will become crystal clear whether, yes, this one thing that's less passion and more about financial, windfall is something that I should focus on and continue to focus on, or nope, you know what, let that go and just focus on what you're ultimately here to do. And that's to help raise consciousness through, Positive Head and the projects surrounding that.
Well, it definitely sounds like you're on the right path and you're applying the right mindset towards that decision-making process. So I think wherever you go, I think if you bring any amount of the energy that you've displayed or shown over the past hour, then I think you're going to be successful. So
I'll be something, right? I mean, you won't be able to ignore me wherever the hell, even if it's under the bridge next to your house. It's like, who's the crazy guy bantering under the bridge?
Wasn't that the guy I heard on Harry's podcast like 6 months ago?
Exactly.
So last question, since we're in turn the tables mode, I'm going to turn around one more time on you. It's 60 seconds,
right,
60 seconds or less. Brandon, what is the meaning of life?
Oh, I love this. You hit me with my own question. The meaning of life is to remember who and what you truly are and to live that to the fullest, to live, to love, to remember, and wake up to the divine truth of your soul and your being. You are literally love incarnate, and you have everything at your disposal. Remember it, and all is literally one. Act accordingly.
Well, that's a fantastic way to end this interview. A fantastic way for us to enter this weekend. I'm really buzzing right now. This is an amazing conversation, and I was looking forward to it, and it delivered on all fronts. So thank you so much for making the time, and thanks for sharing this space with me.
Harry, it's such an honor to share, and I so appreciate you reaching out to talk to me. And yeah, keep doing what you're doing, man. And if there's anything I can ever do for you, let me know. Not because I'm such a great guy, because I'm selfish, the good kind of selfish.
So what's the best place for folks to track you down?
The best way is probably through the website. Of course, the podcast, as we've mentioned a few times, is the Positive Head Podcast, and positivehead.com. I'm Brandon at positivehead.com if you want to email me or drop a line through the site, say hi. And yeah, that's probably the best. Of course, I'm on, social media, Facebook mostly. And yeah, so you can reach me on there as well. And yeah, I love connecting, man. It's such a pleasure to connect with any and everyone, who's resonating, right?
Well, best of luck, and thanks again. And I'm looking forward to getting caught up on some of the more recent episodes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Harry. I appreciate you, man.
All right. So what'd you think? Are you buzzing? I mean, I was. How can you not be? How can you not have this like positive vibe going on after that conversation? Like I mentioned at the top of the show, we were hitting it off so well. And I think that's the type of interaction that you should look to have with your guests on your show, whether you're bringing them on, whether you're interviewing them, whether they're your co-host, or even if you can infuse that energy when you have a solo show and you've got your listener in your mind when you're having that conversation. There's nothing that says you can't have that same type of interaction. And so that's my challenge to you this week, is to have an interaction with someone that is at the level that you heard in this conversation with Brandon. And if you're not clear about what that was, go back and listen to it again, and you'll pick up what we're putting down. But do that this week. Have a conversation with a loved one, a spouse, a family member, your child, your coworker, a stranger, someone you meet on your commute, someone you meet in the streets. Just try to have this positive, no agenda interaction, even if it's for 30 seconds. It doesn't have to be an hour-long conversation like we had, and if it is, then all the better for it. But I want to see how that changes your day, and I want to use this great conversation as a jumping off point for that. So you usually don't get a lot of homework from me, but this week you've got some. And let me know how it goes. So we'll have if you are doing this, I don't want to overcomplicate the hashtags here, but if you are doing this, just tag me at Podcast Junkies and hashtag positivity challenge, and then let me know what you did. This episode is brought to you by CastSource, and they're having, speaking of positivity, a positive experience with me and with what I'm able to offer my clients. They're specifically targeted at podcasters, and they can take your audio and transform it into a transcription. What's awesome about CastSource is that they can customize the output. So if you want an HTML, you want a PDF, you want it just a plain text file, or if you got a special format that you want because you're going to share it with your guests, which is something that we do as well, they can do that for you. They've got a 24 to 48 hour turnaround and competitive rates. So if you order more, you get reduced pricing. Head on over to podcastjunkies.com/CastSource, CastSource. Positively speaking, we are also a member of Podcastica. I wonder if any of you have checked out the shows there. They've got some really fantastic content. They like they're someone else. They's me. They's us. We've got great shows over there. We got Fear the Walking Dead. We've got Ron Dawson's show. We've got Morgan Dix's show on meditation. You should check them out. And if you have, let me know, because I want to know that this is reaching you, or this is encouraging you to try out a new show and something, get out of your comfort zone. Game on Microphones is having a fantastic series. I'm really paying a lot of attention to that because I'm addicted to Game of Thrones. Fear the Walking Dead. It's just interesting shows and something to check out when your queue is a little empty. So do that. The music is provided by Cedar and Soil, cedarsoil.com. Check out the great music that George is producing. And if any of you have checked out the songs and you've got feedback on that, let me know. This is like the feedback episode. But yeah, in general, like whenever I talk about something here and it resonates with you, it's nice if you let me know that worked for you. As always, subscribe to the show and the retention hashtag. Sorry, one more thing on the subscriptions. I know that I always push folks towards iTunes, but I'm wondering if there's folks that are using Google Play as well, because I've been making sure that that's a link for the show as well. And I think it's going to be a bigger deal. There's been some news in the podcasting world recently because Midroll just bought Stitcher, and some podcasters are up in arms about that because I think they're going to completely ruin the experience because the audio on Stitcher hasn't always been that good, and obviously since Midroll's an advertising company, they're going to be jamming ads down people's throats. It should be interesting to see how that plays out. But for Android, it was typically always Stitcher, and then when Google Play came in, it was pushing people to Google Play Music. Now maybe Stitcher's back in the game. So a lot of interesting things happening in the podcasting world. Oh yeah, the retention hashtag. Let's go with positive Brandon, BARNDON, and tag myself, podcast_junkies, and Brandon at positive_head, 2 underscored Twitter handles. Last but not least, I'm going to try out something called This Week's Ask. And as I say that, it's funny because I've already asked you to do like 10 things. So I'll be more focused with that in the future. But in terms of supporting the show, I know I typically talk a lot about rating, reviewing, subscribing, etc., etc. The one link I'll ask you to visit, if you haven't done so already, is one that we have on the website called Affiliates. So head on over to podcastjunkies.com/affiliates. And it's a link to a lot of the services that we use or I have used in the past. And because they're affiliate links, if you do decide to use them at no extra charge to you, they provide some support for the show, which is greatly appreciated. And of course, if you buy things on Amazon and use that Amazon link, that helps out too. So any and all of the above is a great way to keep the positivity flowing, because that's the theme for this episode. Hope you guys have a fantastic week. And I had a blast with this conversation, and I can't wait to hear what you respond back with your interactions in the realm of positivity. And you're going to see how dramatically it's going to change your day. And I'm excited. I love you guys. Talk to you next week.